Well, welcome to season 2, episode 2 of the Dock Talk podcast. I'm Aimee and Jeff, the executive director of Inland Rivers Ports and Terminals, and with me is my best friend and my co-pilot, Captain Jeff Monroe.
Hi, Aimee. How are you? And I'm Jeff Monroe. I'm the Director of Education and Standards for the International Association of Maritime and Port Executives. And we do the professional certification for a lot of folks in the port industry worldwide. And we've had a great relationship with IRPT, which has been fabulous, and very pleased with that. And I think in 2023, we had 2,600 people certified and trained worldwide, which was wonderful. Good portion of those being your people, Aimee. So
That's amazing, Jeff. Thank you so much for your service to our industry. So for our listeners, joining us on the podcast today, again, this is season 2. With each season, quite literally, comes new challenges and new opportunities for growth. And so, let's jump right into it. So here we are, kind of experiencing a little bit of low water or drought issues that may be impacting commercial navigation on our river system. And I know you have a lot of thoughts about that, Captain. So, let's jump into some of that. I know that we've had a pretty dry, rainy season. We're really hoping and fingers crossed that we're going to have significant snowpack in the mountains up north that will contribute, once that melts, into a robust flow on our river system.
I think you're right. I think, as we come into the spring and everything, we're going to see a lot more flow on the river system. I think the big issue is that the primary choke points are not the river system, but where the river system connects to and to your gateway facilities and stuff, and gateway ports such as New Orleans and stuff. And the big issue now, of course, is that there's very low water, and that continues to be a problem in the Panama Canal. They've had a number of ship delays. They've reduced the draft on the vessels going through, and considerably. 6 to 8 feet overall. Don't have the same problems with the Suez Canal, obviously, because it's a sea level canal. And in Panama, what's been happening is that the older lock system in Gatun Lake is fed by lakes that are surrounding the outside of the canal. And those have been running very dry. And so they're not getting enough water in Gatun Lake and stuff like that. Of course, the new locks down there have got a recovery system where they take the water out and put it back in and stuff. So we're hoping that that's going to get better, and we're hoping there's going to be a little bit more of an issue. The issue now, what has happened because of the Western issues, with the Western ports and the congestion and labor issues and stuff, a lot of folks shifted over to the Suez Canal, where there's no problem because it is a sea level canal. The problem over there is that the ships are getting shot at. And what's been going on here is that, there's been a lot of concern about this whole thing with Gaza and with the Gaza Strip and everything. And of course, the Houthi rebels have been shooting at commercial vessels, not even caring if they're going to Israel or not. And several of the lines have suspended service. So that's creating a choke point. Now, the U.S. Navy, along with a lot of other coalitions, have put up a whole system of protections in there to kind of push back against that, to protect the vessels going through. But, we see these congestion points in various locations. They exist: Suez Canal, Cape of Good Hope, English Channel, Panama Canal. These have existed at all times, even the Malacca Straits. But now this is something unusual. We had problems in the past with Hormuz, the Straits of Hormuz. Now we're seeing this problem, and this is a much bigger shipping route. 30% of the container trade in the world goes through there, and over 12% of the trade is going through the Suez Canal. So you're looking at a major potential choke point, and that's going to have a big ripple effect. And the ripple effect is going to affect your folks, Aimee, because the bottom line is a lot of the export that you're handling, is all bulk export and everything. And what's going to wind up happening is anything that's heading, outbound into places like Asia and stuff like that, they're either going to be stuck going through this canal, and that's going to be an issue, or they're going to get stuck going through the Panama Canal because of the low water. They've got ships waiting there, 25, 30 ships a day waiting to get through. And so that's going to create a big problem. So that's going to have a ripple effect on your system.
So let's talk about that, because there's been so many articles. I've been contacted so much to contribute or provide a quote for, so many different articles in the mainstream media about the impacts of the drought and the low water and what that actually means for, the agriculture community. And there is an impact to it, but I think what is most important is that we take that step back and we say, we've been dealing with high and low water for years, for decades, right? There is a constant fluctuation of the river levels. And what has remained steady is that we have always been reliable and sustainable. So whereas we may have to reduce our draft, and let's break down some of the economics in this. So if we have to reduce our draft maybe by a foot in the barge so that we can transit, the lower water, the lower level of river, right? That means that the cost to ship the goods goes up, maybe not significantly, but it does go up. It does impact the farmers. The farmers are, trading and selling and whatnot on the free market. And transportation is a cost of doing business. It's one of the biggest line items they have, is transportation from farm to market. So then we combine that with the draft issues in the Panama Canal, or the safety issues and the liability going through the Suez Canal with the Houthis and the rebels, etc. So can you break down the economics of what the real impact really is for our agriculture community, our farmers, and the supply of fertilizers and other commodities going out?
Well, as you know, Aimee, only 10% of the cargo that's handled is international cargo out of North America, the rest being domestic cargo. So it's not going to affect overall the domestic moves. It will affect some of the river system. But the one thing that is very adaptable with your river system is that you all stockpile things. And that works out pretty well from the port for domestic utilization. This whole issue that we're facing with what's going on in the Suez Canal and Panama Canal, and the Red Sea is universally impacting all the transportation systems. So it's affecting the rail, right? It is affecting, obviously, the truck traffic, though less of it is utilized with bulk cargoes, and it's certainly affecting the river system. So everything we're shipping out, whether it's containers, whether it's automobiles, whatever, that are dependent on those choke points on going through the Suez and Panama Canal are going to be impacted. So it's going to add cost to all the modes of transportation. The question is, how much is it going to add? And that's pure speculation at this point. We do recognize that it's going to be more expensive. There's no question about it. And, once it's stabilized in the Red Sea, that trade will come back in play. And as you know, a lot of the cargo that is exported, the bulk cargo that's exported to Asia, does go through the Suez Canal. And so that's going to be paramount for impacts on your ports and on your river system and stuff. And it's particularly been unique recently because we're handling much more export of DDGs, and we're handling more export of legumes and soy and stuff because of what's been happening over in Ukraine. And of course, we're the largest exporter of oil in the world right now. Tremendous amount of oil being produced, and that's outbound, but we've got oil inbound as well, because a lot of our refineries not set up for the loading. So your question was, what's the economic impact going to be? We don't know. We really don't know, because this is a little bit new field for us and stuff. We recognize that ship delays and in either location create a problem and add extra costs, which in most cases the lines are absorbing the cost, unless you're in the charter operations, which is a lot of what your folks are doing, right? But with the container trade, they're not, some of the lines have just stopped going through. They're going like, we're not going to put our ships in harm's way, and so as a result of that, now what's it cost to add 22 days to go around the Cape of Good Hope and put that in there? But those are fixed contracts as well. So who's going to absorb that? Most likely the lines.
So I want to ask you to shift gears here and really think about, um, again, the agriculture community, the exporters of the United States, and this low water issue that we have. One of the big goals for the IRPT Association is advocacy and educating our lawmakers on the impact of certain situations and circumstances, and what they do in Congress can really affect and impact the way we do business. So here's what I want to ask you, Captain, is there anything that Congress can do in times of low water or drought conditions where we are reducing the draft, we're increasing the transportation cost? What can Congress do, if anything, to help alleviate that burden or lessen the burden on the exporter?
Well, I think there's a twofold thing here. I think the first one obviously is the more obvious one, and that's the investment in infrastructure. While you have the river systems doing what they're doing, and you have low flows and all the rest of it, you find yourself in a position now where you can really invest in your infrastructure, which is a lot of what the coastal ports are doing right now, because they've got decreased volumes going through, so they're investing in their infrastructure. But Aimee, I have been a constant beater of the drum in regards to a contiguous policy that really incorporates all modes of transportation, including the inland river system. So you're lucky with the Port Infrastructure Development Program that you got 20%. Of those funds that are available are designated for the smaller ports and the Western River ports and stuff. But what's going to happen in 2024? Right? There are so many demands right now, and the deficit is getting such that investment needs to be consistent, and that's part of a national policy that takes into account all aspects of transportation, right? So it really has to look at the river system as well as the coastal system, as well as rail, truck, and everything else, and say, here's where we're gonna put our funds, and here's where we're gonna do it consistently.
You're right. So you do continuously beat that drum, and I will be right there by your side in the marching band. But let's take this away, because we had a $1 trillion infrastructure package that was signed. So landside investment, there is in 2022 21 through 26 sustainable long-term investment, where through the infrastructure plan, say, for example, the Port Infrastructure Development Program has a continuous $450 million in the bucket each year until 2026. So there's that long-term strategy. However, what was not included, I don't believe, in that infrastructure, that $1 trillion infrastructure package, was long-term funding for the Army Corps of Engineers. And that can really impact the way that transportation works, right? When we talk about operating and maintaining our river system, the bipartisan infrastructure law put a huge amount of funding into capital investment into some of the locks, the dams, the dredging, etc. But now we must really look at this from a long-term perspective aspect that says, okay, we've got this new capital investment. Now we must maintain that. So I applaud you for thinking about that long-term capital strategy, and applaud the administration for including so much infrastructure investment landside, but we must also give that same consideration to the actual river as well, to the Army Corps of Engineers that operates and maintains that.
Well, I think that the biggest issue we're facing, and as well as I do, Aimee, that the money that the Army Corps does get, they use pretty effectively, for what they can do. What the big problem is that it takes so long to go through the permitting process. So you've got a federal agency now dealing with another federal agency is going through a permitting process. And the permitting process is so long and so complex, right? It takes so much time that, if you get $10 million for a project, by the time the project is actually released and you're able to start construction, all right, the cost of the project has gone up, because we're not talking about weeks or months. We're talking about years before the permits are issued. And there's got to be a way to slim down the permitting process without adversely impacting the environment. Nobody wants to mess up the environment, right? But on the other hand, why does it take so long? And that's
So
part of a national policy.
and I am unfamiliar on if there are firms or corporations that can help some of the ports or the terminals going through the permitting process. So without naming names, are you aware of resources available to transportation providers that are looking at, going through that permitting process?
Well, I'll tell you, without getting into names and stuff like that, I generally universally hear from all the people that, like have taken the program, the consulting firms and stuff that we've worked with who specialized in permitting and everything. And I think the overall perspective is it is what it is. You just got to go through it because you're really, really hanging on what the permitting process is about. And I'm going to give you a great example. As you know, I used to run the Portland airport as well as the seaport and the intermodal facilities up in Portland. And I remember getting a letter before I took the position up there, getting a letter from the FAA saying, you have a problem with the runway, it has to be made longer. I'm going to give you a letter. If you don't do something, it's going to affect your 105 certificate, et cetera, et cetera. So we went to the state, went to the EPA, we presented them, and talked to them. And I says, how long is it going to take us to get these basic permits? And they said, 6 months. I says, great. I says, and I knew we had to go faster. So I pull up my letter and I hand it to them. And they read it with great interest. And they says, well, I think we can slim this down to 180 days. So the reality is in all of this is that I recognize that they have to exist and they have to do what is necessary, what's laid out in the law and the processes and everything like that. But we're not paying attention to this. It's not just a question of ask for more money. It's a question of ask for more money and utilize it effectively. And one of the most expensive things is just getting through the permitting. And the only ones who benefit from this, oddly enough, are the people who are consultants who are dealing with the permitting, because, it is what it is. We're going to go through the process and get it done.
So let's change the world, Jeff. That's what we're doing here, right? One of our goals is we're going to make this happen. So we've identified, a problem in, maybe the low water, the drought issues, and we're looking at potential solutions. What can Congress do to help? We've identified a second problem, which is the lengthy permitting process. So I'm going to ask you for a solution. What can Congress do to help? Are we looking at permit reform?
Well, I think it's not just permitting, Aimee. It's permitting, it's consistent funding, it's looking at the actual issues, and it's providing access for the shippers so it's to their advantage. I mean, look, we live on the services that we provide, whether it's in the ports or whether it's in the common carriers or whatever. So a comprehensive policy does not just look at one aspect. It doesn't look at the rail, it doesn't look at the road, doesn't look at the waterways, doesn't look at the environmental, doesn't look at the permitting, all in isolated silos, right? It looks at it all comprehensively. And we keep throwing these ideas, well, let's create a task force here, or let's do something here. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, because you on the inland river system have been beating the drum for the inland river system, and people go, oh yeah, we're glad, yeah, we've heard of the Mississippi River, but the bottom line here is that it really needs to incorporate all of it. Are there things we can do to improve the waterways? Well, certainly there are things we can do to improve flood control, and Mother Nature is Mother Nature. But the question becomes, can the shippers effectively and cost efficiently get their cargo out? And do they have alternatives? And there is a means of coordination at the federal level that says, okay, we need to look at this right now, or we need to fix this. Your locks, for example, how long does it take to get your locks fixed? All right. And you look at the aspect, they'll start into the process, they'll spend all this time permitting, and by the time they actually go to fix the lock, right, they only have enough money to do half the job. All right. And that has been consistent back and forth. So I think certainly those are the type of things, but we as a nation do not pay attention to our transportation system. And as I say in my courses, last time we had a comprehensive system in place, Harry Truman was president. And neither one of us was born then, when he was president. So, which is a good thing. Means we're not that old.
Well, I'm excited for the year 2024, where we can get out and beat our drum a little bit louder and a little bit further than we have in the past. I'm grateful to have you as a partner in that. I'm grateful to all of the IRPT members all across this nation that are supporting, our association, providing those legislative solutions and more. So as you know, IRPT is getting ready to start our spring round of basin meetings. We have 11 different river basins that we serve. And so we'll be gathering all of our members together in each of the basins to talk about some of these challenges, but more importantly, to collaborate on those solutions. So I'm excited to get that started. I also know that you're very excited to get your 2024 classes started. So you want to maybe hit on one or two of the first couple coming up?
Yeah, I found what's been interesting about our course programs is that there's a lot younger people coming into it, your generation more than my generation, and I think what's been interesting is that we're seeing more people who are now becoming more skilled in dealing with port issues, learning about the port issues. So, we've got courses coming up in the British Virgin Islands, in Norfolk, in New Orleans, which is a combination course of both inland and coastal. We're looking at Long Beach and several other places during the spring and summer and fall. So I think in the long run here, one of the things that is paramount is getting people to understand how to communicate with their legislators, right? And so, for example, one of the things you do is you do your educational programs where you invite them in, right? But sometimes all they get is that little piece, right? Or they get, they're dealing with 100 other issues. Our prospect is here, I would love to see legislative people take, even the first couple of days of the program to understand what the industry is about, right? Because then the staffs are ones are going to shape things, and we meet with people all the time. I do a regular briefing for Senator Collins and also for our other senator in Maine. And I think they always take great interest in what we're doing. All right. And I think that that's great. All right. But it has to be ongoing, consistent. And as well as I do, that they're getting hit all the time with one thing or the other. So the reality here in all of this is that we've got to figure a way not only to educate our port professionals, but to keep our legislators in the loop, our federal and certainly our state people.
And again, as we lead into 2024, this is a presidential election year. I'd love to hear from our hopefuls on how they're going to impact maritime transportation. What's included in their policy, and why should we vote for them? It's something that I'd like to see and hear more. I would like to hear more transportation related issues from those that are seeking congressional or even administrative positions.
I'd love to sit in the audience and raise my hand and go like, excuse me, what do you think of this thing? Or what do you think of that thing? Stuff like that.
I'll meet you at the town hall.
Yeah, that's where I need to be. It was kind of great. I sat down, we did a briefing for Senator King after they passed the Ocean Shipping Reform Act. And, you plan, maybe if you're lucky, you get 20 minutes with a senator. We were with him for close to an hour. And it's, Maine is a maritime state. All right. And I think that our DOT understands maritime, right? Our senators understand maritime. Our congressional delegation overall understands maritime. And that's something that needs to be done across the board, right? I understand you're starting a program here in the future where you're going to be dealing with, raising young children and helping them educate. That's what we need, right? We need to prepare the future generation because my generation is getting into fishing and hunting and
I was going to say, please don't say flatlined.
no, we're not flat. I'm not ready to flatline yet. But, I think the bottom line is that with this great new generation of people coming up, and it's not just in our industry, Aimee, it's the operational people, the people who work in the rivers, working the tugs, working the ships and stuff like that. These are all young people, all right? And it's the same aspect with our port people. They need to be educated, but so do our staffs. So do our
Agreed. Thank you so much, Captain, for your time, your friendship, and your camaraderie. Thank you to all of our listeners who have tuned in today, and I do hope to meet some of you all at our basin meetings or in an IMPE class. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if there's something in particular that you'd like to hear. And everyone, thank you.
Well, can I say that we need, as ports, as associations, we need to stay engaged with our people. Try to do that in every opportunity you can. If you need some help or guidance, certainly Aimee does a great job with hers, and certainly we're helpful with our folks and stuff like that. So it is always a pleasure. It's a joy. And we'll look forward to our next conversation. I'd love to chat about resiliency. I
Me
think it'd be a
too.
great opportunity to talk 6 months before the first hurricanes hit. So,
Thank you, sir.
all
Thank
right,
you.
take care.